Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us wherever you are joining us from this evening. How is everyone doing? And thank you for taking out the time to join us today for another episode of the Server's Table. And as we always say, on this table, every problem has a solver, and we get to talk with the solvers here on the table and get to know the problem that they are solving, either through their community work or through their business. And our guest today is joining us all the way from Toronto, and I'm glad to have her here. We'll get to meet her soon for her to tell us about herself. But she has spent her whole career on a question that most of the sectors, would rather avoid, which is what if how we raise money matters so much as how much we raise. Today we are going to talk about all of that today, and just before she introduces herself, she's the founder of Elevate Philanthropy Consulting, a trauma of money certified fundraiser who helps nonprofits raise money in a way that puts community need ahead of donors' comfort. So, welcome, Esther, and thank you for joining me today. And if you're watching us, I welcome you to say hello in the chat. Drop the question, any question that you have. We'll get to bring them up to talk about them. Or even if you're watching after this episode have aired, if you have any question for myself or for Esther, just feel free to drop it in the chat, and we're going to get back to you. So welcome, Esther. Let's get to meet you. For someone who is meeting you for the first time, tell us
Mm.
who you are. Tell us all about Elevate and Philanthropy Consulting.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Catherine, for inviting me to this table. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. For those of you that don't know me, I mean, Catherine did a fantastic introduction. There's really not much to add. The way I describe myself is I'm a resource mobilizer. I'm committed to community centric fundraising, which is about centering the community in our work. I'm someone that thinks the philanthropy and nonprofit sector has the best and worst of humanity. But it's
Mhm.
the optimism that we do have a lot of power and we do have a lot of strength to solve problems that I stay in it. So, best way I describe myself is someone that was reluctant about fundraising, but stays because I do have hope for it. And I see it every
Mm.
day in my work with the people I meet. So, even if I'm criticizing it a lot, know that I actually criticize it because I have hope for it.
That's beautiful. And having hope is one thing because it's more of like knowing that there is a positive aspect to this, or there is
Hmm,
a light at the end of the tunnel, as we always say. So
absolutely.
we would love to hear all of about that, and also get to pick all the wisdom that you'll be sharing with us today. You said something about how we raise money matters as much as how much we raise. Could you tell us more about that and what that means?
Sure. So, the nonprofit industrial complex, which I'm saying very specifically, not philanthropy as a whole, because philanthropy is an ancient human instinct that has been with us since humans roamed the earth. But the sector itself has a extremely problematic history and even problematic industry practices that are considered normal or considered effective, that may prioritize funders or donors comfort or wants above what community actually needs. And that's the
Mhm.
tough thing about fundraising is when your only evaluation for success is did you hit your revenue goal, the ways
Mhm.
that you get to that revenue goal might not be examined. So what that means is it could be through exploitative storytelling, or it could
Mhm.
be because you did it at the expense of someone's entire mental health and labor. It could be
Mhm.
because you partnered with a really problematic funder.
Mhm.
Um, so when we talk about the way you raise money is just as important as how much you raise is, are we actually doing this in a way that's reflective of the values we state? And are we doing this in a way that centers community? If you're just looking at the money, those pieces might not be examined as much as they should be.
Mhm. Wow, that's interesting. Take us back uh, at the beginning, like what put you into fundraising in the first place?
So I have a really, most people I chat to, they'll say I fell into fundraising or I'm an accidental fundraiser, but I actually was someone that was told to go into fundraising. So I actually originally wanted to be a professor of literature. I was going to be the most pretentious feminist prof ever. And then I finished grad school and I realized it's a lonely life in academia. And I was at a little bit of I was a little bit lost in what to do after having dedicated my studies towards a very specific career. So I hired a career coach actually. And we did values exercises, we did skills assessments, we did a bunch of exercises, and she helped me so much. And at the end of it, she was like, I actually think you'd be a great fundraiser. And I was like, I know why you think I'd be a great fundraiser. I know why you think I would be effective at it. And I agree with you, but I have no interest in pandering to rich white people as a job. I think that's really weird.
Yeah.
And that was my understanding of fundraising, was like, you're pandering to really rich people, people that lived reality is so different from mine. And that's when I realized through community-centric fundraising, the movement and a lot of incredible fundraisers is fundraising is about resource mobilization. And there is the entry point for me was CCF, where I learned that there's a way to do this work, and there's people that have these tensions with the sector, but also still manage to do this work effectively. And so that's how I entered this work. Was I always had skepticisms about this sector, and it wasn't until I found people that were talking about the problems inherent in it that I was like, okay, I can see how to locate myself in this.
Wow. So it wasn't accidental after all.
No, a long circular journey.
Right, right. Oh wow. You talked about a sector, that concentrates power narrowly, and leaves fundraisers of color, out of the room. What did that look like for you when you started?
When I started, I was actually very lucky to have a director of development that wanted to implement CCF. So a lot of the experiences people might have had in early career, I was actually very lucky to have a director that was curious about how to do this more equitably. But in terms of problems, like and even with the support of a director, etc., like I was coming into a women's shelter that most of the demographic was, like donor demographic was older, affluent white women, when most of the survivors we actually provided services for were newcomer, immigrant, refugee, very different lived realities from our donor base. So, part of the work that I realized was, and a lot of the communications was very like, and then the survivor came into the shelter and everything changed for them. And it's because of your money that we did that. Moving towards CCF was in a lot of ways a journey that we as development team and the audience had to go through. And I think that was really transformative for me, was seeing the effects and what's possible when you're honest about these conversations. Like one tangible example I have is the shelter used to have a campaign around the holidays where they would have like a wish list of toys and gifts, and people would buy it, and they called the campaign Sponsor a Family, which this isn't sponsorship. You're buying them gifts. Like there's a lot of things problematic with that term. And my director asked me to figure out a term for the campaign, and we shifted it to Stand with a Family. First was the big thing. But the bigger change was we actually solicited gift cards instead. And it was a lot of conversations with donors that were used to, going out, and they want the feeling of buying a toy for a kid in a shelter. They want the feeling of like purchasing this gift. And then a lot of conversations I had with donors was, half the joy of the holidays is the feeling of going out and choosing the gift, choosing what you think your child would want, and that's a gift in itself. So yes, the gift is not for you to have that feeling. The gift is for the survivors to have that feeling. When I said that, we had, I think it was like 200% increase in the campaign. There was a wild number where straight gift cards, straight monetary donations, because we were having the courage to have this conversation and say, who are we centering here? Are we centering you and you having the feeling of going out, purchasing the gifts? If you really want it to be for the survivors, just give a gift card. And even the gift card selection process, we had our program staff talk to survivors and our clients and say what gift cards would be most useful, and they'd vote, and then we'd select those gift cards. Every survivor got $100. It's one of our most successful campaigns, and although the goal and the money is great to reflect on as a metric, it was the conversations and hearing people really, I could hear like the click in their brain where they're like, you're right, that does center me. Like if I'm like, hey, I want to buy a gift for this child, I'm actually, it's better for me to give the money so that the parent can buy, or the parent can buy for themselves or do whatever they want. Like they can decide what to do with that money. And that is a much bigger gift. And those conversations still stay with me.
This is really amazing. And if you look at how you switched it over there, and not just the percentage increase, but then the happiness of these people, how they are going to feel that they are going in to get their own gifts, and just like you said, that is also gifts on its own. Just that feeling that they also get to do what others are doing, and they are not just left behind, is something that one cannot really, monetize or measure with monetary level kind of feeling. So I really appreciate that how you were able to switch it there. And of course, if any of our audience is watching, they can be able to learn from that. Just sometimes keywords can make people feel left out, or they can make them feel you may have intended something positive, just because nobody gives out money intending anything negative, but how the people who are on their receiving end is going to feel is also another thing that one has to check when doing fundraising. So thank you for sharing that story with us. You started your early days with at Elevate right now, which is your own organization. What was it like for you? What were you trying to figure out as you went?
What was I trying to figure out when I started Elevate?
Yeah.
Oh.
In the early days, right?
In the early days, I'll be very honest, as many stories of women of color, I was trying to figure out a way to stay in the sector without being bound to organizations or leaders that didn't reflect or align with my values. And that is a big reason why a lot of women of color consultants I know have left to start their own, was just to be able to work and do this work and provide these services and feel heard and respected, and be able to do it in a way that didn't feel punishing. So if I'm honest, that was the early days. And I have to say, even though it's been early, I've been incredibly successful in finding clients that are aligned with me in values, where it's not a shock when I say something like community-centric fundraising and this is why I do things the way I do, or when I push back on an idea. That's been the real success, is being able to sort and meet people in organizations that want to do this more equitably and willing to be curious with me about it, and trust me on that, and for me to trust them. And that's really what Elevate is trying to do, is really cultivate our imagination to do things in a way that's more aligned with our values and our principles. Because I'm so aware of the urgency and the scarcity that all of us are in when you're in fundraising or when you're in philanthropy. But it's when you're in community with people that are willing to trust you and be curious about it, it keeps you accountable to that. So I'm very lucky in the sense that every day I work and the people I meet, and they all hold me to some accountable to thinking about things more deeply and thinking about how I can make it a little bit better, a little bit more equitable, not just in terms of what I do for my clients, but also for my business.
So when you work with a nonprofit that may be trying to raise money, what changes for them when you work with them? Like, walk us through it, how you're able to work with those people.
Oh, I mean, that's a question best left for them, I guess. But, I work with nonprofits across Canada and the US. And I do fundraising, but I also do equity work. So, for example, this past weekend, I did a values exercise with a local nonprofit that provides legal services for the community. And, I think the impact of my work is really about culture change.
Mm,
I always say people hire me to do fundraising, but what they're asking for is a change in culture. Like,
mm,
for example, raising money, like I can talk about the metrics, like helping a recent client go from 140K deficit to being flush, or securing a 700K grant. Like, and these are all great metrics, but like the things that are more intangible are how the board feels about fundraising after working with me, or how the staff understand their role, or how we know that fundraising is not something that's, left to the CEO to figure out, but is actually something that we all need to collaborate on. How fundraising is actually a great way to measure the trust we have within the community. These are the
mhm.
things that are really, they come out. One of the ways to evaluate them is metrics. But for example, I had a board that never fundraised, didn't know how to do it, was terrified. A lot of the board members were retired judges or lawyers, so they were kind of doing this like as a favor. They led their first campaign, exceeded their campaign goals. I think going from 0 to 5K within 2 months in a peer-to-peer campaign
Wow.
that they've never done. I mean, I was helping them set up the Zoom
Mm,
to do the conversation. Like, I was so impressed with them because they were really, by their own assessment, the last people to know how to do fundraising, like cared least about it. And at the end of it, I felt like we just had like 7 new fundraisers to the team. And
wow.
they were all excited about it, and they had all activated their community about it. And that was for me such a big success story,
Mhm.
um, in terms of like the culture shift about fundraising. Like, people that hated it are going around asking their friends, writing the stewardship emails, asking the ED how to support. Like, that's a big change.
Mhm. That's huge. That is huge. And you're a trauma of money certified person,
Yes,
fundraiser. And for anyone hearing that for the first time, what
yes.
does it mean, and what drew you to becoming a trauma of money certified fundraiser?
Sure. So, trauma of money certification, or being a trauma of money certified practitioner, is someone that's gone through the methodology created by Chantel Chapman. Um,
Okay.
and it's really it's a toolkit to think about the way that money activates us.
Mm,
And it was a course we did, and to get the certification, you have to complete it. And
mhm,
it's hard to describe it. It's because there's so many components to it. But the best way I describe it is, I think for everybody has a money story. And I think money activates us in ways that we probably don't know. And I think money can have us react in ways that we can't predict, because money is a symbol that carries a lot of power, can
mhm,
cause feelings of worthlessness or not belonging. And I think when I originally heard about it, as a fundraiser, I'm someone that deals with money all the time, talks about money, getting money, not enough money. And I'm also someone that grew up without a lot of money. My family and I grew up in a lot of scarcity. And I'm
mhm.
fully aware that my money story and the work I do activates, but also I was seeing it occur in EDs, board
Mhm.
members, fellow fundraisers. And so
Yeah.
what drew me to complete the certification was I wanted more tools to
Mhm.
discuss it and really think about how to support people, and unpack some of these feelings or associations they might have with money. Like, when we talk about fundraising and people are like, oh my God, I can't do fundraising, I can't ask for money. Usually
Mhm.
there's a lot more to that than just, I'm not an extrovert, I don't like soliciting. Like, usually there's a little bit of a discomfort, or
Mhm.
inability to separate the ask of money from
Yeah.
their worth, or like their identity in a way.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, being a trauma certified resource mobilizer, it just
Mhm.
means that I'm taking the steps to understand and contextualize that, and not just be like, get over it. You got to do it, but actually think about and ask the questions and guide people into like, okay, like why is this activating? And one of the most powerful lessons I had from that course, I'll never forget, is Chantel, the founder, was actually talking about how she had an example of a nonprofit that worked really hard to write this grant. They finally got the money,
Mhm.
and 6 months in, and they wouldn't cash it. because they were worried. It was like, and she was like, I actually think this is a great example of the way even good situations or scenarios with money can activate
Right?
you. Where it was
Yeah.
like, they did all this work and they're like, we can be out of scarcity, we're going to get this money. They get
Mm-hmm.
it, and then they don't know what to do with it because they're like, I don't know what it's like to have like our money, this much money. This is the first time, the largest amount they've ever gotten. And I
Yeah.
actually see versions of this scenario a lot where even the positive scenarios with money can be activating. The negative scenarios with money are obviously activating.
Yeah.
Got individuals with their own stories about money, associations with money. So it's really, I think it's been one of the more powerful certifications and trainings I've done is just to really think about this and understand that when you're in fundraising, it's a different, what I call wealth culture. There
Yeah.
can be discomfort in interacting with it, and it just helps me guide people through
That's amazing. I mean, you have great stories, and
it.
like you get to kind of, which is more of like you're changing mindsets, you are changing lives, you're also changing communities that you're working with, which is I'm sure one of the things you said about intangible measurements of the things that you also get from the work that you do, apart from the metrics, apart from the
Yeah.
numbers, but when you see people, change this way, or when you see a life that is being, served in a different way, that feeling can be immeasurable. So that's really awesome. Wow.
I
So,
have to say though,
yeah,
it's also changed me. I'm now an entrepreneur where I have to look at money for my own business and my own, and the trauma money certification. It's been helpful in my business, of course, in giving me the supports to support clients, but also for me as an entrepreneur, I confront some of the fears and anxieties I have around it, and it's been
yeah.
immensely helpful. So both in personal and business. I can't say selfishly, it was also for myself, and seeing the effects of it's had on both personal and business has been really incredible.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You helped secure $700,000 to train frontline staff and medical providers, right, in
Yes.
culturally competent care for Black people navigating substance use. Could you please tell us more about that?
Yes, it was a federal grant. I don't know if I'm allowed to speak about it too
Oh,
detailed,
no
but
problem.
yeah, it was a really incredible program and opportunity to think
Mm,
about how to support Black communities in this light. And that's when I really think resource mobilization can be so powerful. That's when I
mhm.
think, because that was a grant, and um, I think when people think about grant writing, they just think about, hey, can you pull a budget together? Can you like write the mission in 200
Mhm.
words? A real grant writer is someone that can imagine a program that doesn't exist yet and think about it holistically for 1 year or 5 years,
Mhm.
and really think about the building blocks for that. So,
Yeah.
why I found that so powerful beyond the actual mission and community served is
Mhm.
just the fact that something that me and the team and a fellow consultant came and thought about, that we imagined together, that we, push back on each other about, is something that has now become tangible and is real
Yeah.
money, funding real positions, funding real trainings. That's one of the
Mm.
most satisfying parts about my job, is that something that we imagine and conceptualize being executed.
Wow. Wow. I wanted to ask about the other one, but I don't know if you're also able to talk about more about it because of the organization that you helped to move
Yeah.
from deficits to, raising up to, I think you said you helped a youth organization go from 1,000 $140,000 deficit
Yeah,
into surplus in under a year. This is huge,
it is.
um, very huge. I can imagine if I was to be owner of this organization, how I'm gonna feel this happening for me. So how did that really happen?
I'll say that happened from the efforts of the CEO and I, like equal. It's
Mm,
not like me doing that for them. Like, we actually came in, when I saw the state of it, I was actually like, I don't know if I can help, if I'm honest. I really said that. I was like, sometimes people hire a fundraiser or a fundraising consultant, and they're like, we're in absolute crisis and we need you to fix it. And I have to
mm,
manage expectations off the bat and be like, we can't. Like, I'm not going to able to wave a magic wand. So I love that example
Yeah.
because it's a testament to what happens when you're really committed. And this is the thing that I'll never forget about the CEO. I was honest with her and I said, I don't know if I can help you. I don't know what your expectations are,
Mhm.
but I actually don't know if I'm going to be able to help. And she said, I just need you to show up. I'm going to show
Wow.
up. I need you to show up, and together we're going to do it. And so
Mhm.
really the 140K deficit to being at a surplus is a testament to our collaboration more than I would say like it's me as a fundraiser. Like, we both showed up, even though it's terrifying, even though, like, when you talk about how, I mean, gosh, so much work.
I
I
can
don't know what I
imagine.
would say, but it really was, I have to say, if I was to credit it, was the mutual trust we had in each other about decision making and critical. Like, a lot of times when I'm supporting clients, they're often the only person thinking or
Mm.
responsible for fundraising on the team. So usually the ED or
Yeah.
CEO. And it's very lonely to be having to think about such critical decisions on your own without any support, or like even just someone to say, oh my God, this is really hard and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm so
Yeah.
overwhelmed right now, or I have a grant and I don't know what, there's a million things that need money. Like, how do we decide on what? And I think working with her so closely made me realize, just even by providing that support along with the actual tactics of fundraising, that was a
Mm.
huge help, was just to make sure she didn't feel alone, and just to have someone say, I'm going to show up with you, and the problems that you're facing, I don't know if we're going to solve it, but I will stay with you. And seeing
Mhm.
the results of that, it honestly doesn't feel real even to me. Like, it's such a testament to her resilience and commitment to the organization. Like, I'm just so impressed, because I think true
Wow.
leadership happens when you're in crisis and they're really, nothing's looking good, and you're still showing up every day for yourself and your team. I think that's true leadership. Like, even for me coming in and thinking about the beginning of that, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can help, and I'm pretty confident in my skills, but I'll just never forget her saying, I just need you to show up. And by both of us showing up, having this turnaround, I mean, there's so much that went into the 140K deficit being, I mean, new funders, having honest conversations with current funders, exploring different revenue strategies, really building up individual giving. Like, it's endless the amount of work we did. But to really
Mhm.
sum it up, it would be, we showed up for each other and we held each other accountable, and we pushed. And when it felt hopeless, we still tried. And that's really
Mhm.
the result of that.
Mhm. And truly, truly, showing up is the hardest,
It's
right?
very hard,
And it
yeah.
is very hard to show up,
When
especially when
things
you're
are
looking at
down.
your exactly. You're looking at your spreadsheet and you're seeing that all is going into minus, and you don't even know where to start from. But for her to even say, "I'm going to show up," you show up is something that more. Even when you are sleeping, if that voice comes to you, you just have to get up to do something. And look at where it landed. At least I would say both of you, you are the organization to them having surplus, which
Yeah,
I'm sure if someone had told you guys from that moment you guys were having those honest conversations, you could have said it's not possible. But to do this within a year is a really, really great and huge success, I would say, especially in the fundraising world, because you don't even know where you're going to meet. Even the conversations you're having with your funders may turn out not to be a great one at the end of
yeah,
the day, because at that point it's about the person who has the money to give,
yeah,
and you're just trying to let them see the will I say the vision from your own eyes,
yeah,
for them to release that fund. So that was really a huge one that you guys did there.
mm,
Apart from all these wins, I mean, if we have to keep you here to talk about all these wins, the stories and everything, we are not going to leave here today. So I would say, you said the proudest ones that you have is the one that it's hard to put a number on. I know
mm,
you've talked about some of the intangible success that you feel within yourself. Could you
yeah.
tell us more about that aspect too?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fundraiser, so I'm evaluated for the money I bring in.
Yeah.
But how do we measure culture change? How do we measure, shifts in people's mindset? How do we measure feeling supported? These are all questions that are tough to answer. Um, when I actually reflect on my career, a lot of the wins I have for fundraising are more around equity work, if I'm honest. A lot of the wins I have are leaving a conversation and understanding like we're coming out of this feeling heard. So an example I'll give is the facilitation I just did. You know, you have a group of volunteers that were very oriented towards service for the community.
Yeah.
And we came out of that facilitation and was leading them through a values exercise to determine their values, but not just determine the values, but you know, how do we know that we're squarely operating within our values? How do we know when we're outside of them? Because that's the only way you can call people in, right?
Yeah.
We're having this conversation, and at the end of it, this is when it officially ended, by the way. The facilitation ended, I'm saying goodbye and thank you, and one of them goes, I think we need to think about expanding our board, because it's not good that when asked about community, we weren't able to answer. So what are we going to do about that? And that wasn't a question to me. That wasn't a question to anyone else. But I was so like thrown. I was so like, oh my gosh. I could feel the impact of the facilitation of the conversations we were having be really tangible. And I was like, this is the kind of win that will last with me, where I'm like, just the fact that you're curious about that and being like, wait, we always say we're service, oriented towards the community, but maybe there are gaps that we need to address, and what are the steps we're going to take to address them? That's a huge win for me. That's like, honestly, like the 140K deficit, like all of these are such incredible wins for me, because, if you want to really shift things for the community, shift things for ourselves, it does start with these kind of questions and curiosities. Some of those aren't measurable. Like when someone's actually curious about equity and someone's actually curious about allyship, that's very hard to achieve. Yeah.
Wow. And those are the ones that also keep us going, most especially when things also get very tough and very hard. Some of these intangible successes, some of the things that we remember and tell ourselves that we can still do this, which is really, really very important. And that brings me to the advice that you have for someone who is in a non-profit right now and feels stuck raising money in a way that sits right with them or with their own culture as an organization. Where do you think they should start from?
Oof. I think when it comes to implementing equity in fundraising, you can't do it alone. And that's a really frustrating truth to resign yourself to. So if you're working against, an ED that doesn't believe in it, a board that doesn't believe in it, your team doesn't, and you're the only one thinking about it, it's not, I wouldn't just say like, don't think that you can do it alone, because then you're not setting yourself up for failure. Like, I think there's a lot of folks I've met that are in kind of situations where they're the only one thinking or caring about this, and they're putting all their effort and labor into it and going, why isn't it working? And they feel so demoralized, and it's so unfair, because none of this work, none of actual collective action happens alone. And so if you are feeling alone in this, and maybe in your organization you're the only one, you're not going to be the only one in the world, though. Find people that also think like you and be in relationship and community with them. I will say the community, like fundraisers, are such a generous group of people. Like before I even got into the sector, I was told to do informational interviews with folks, and I'll never forget, one of the things that drew me to the sector was just how generous people were with their time and their, wanting to share their journey and wanting to support you. Like at every level of institution, every level of position, they were supportive. So if you are actually curious about that, first thing I would say is don't try and do it alone. Find community. Second thing I would say is there's an abundance of resources. There are so many people being curious about this. Community-centric fundraising hub is a great example of tactical fundraising advice. A lot of people sharing about their hardship, sharing about their experience that I would look to. Third thing I would say is just know that you're supposed to improve every year. So if you even look at last year's communications, you're like, oh my God, that was so bad and so not aligned with our values. That's okay. That's part of growth. What's not okay is if you just say, well, it's working, so it's fine. Every
Yeah.
communication, every fundraising communication, every campaign, just take the time to actually reflect on what could have been done better.
Mm-hmm.
What could I have improved on? And again, it's the curiosity piece, like not in a critical, judgmental way, but what can I do that's better, even a little bit better? Exercise I lead with in facilitations is exercise called 15% Solutions from
Mm-hmm.
Liberating Structures. And the question is, what can you do to achieve your goal, to improve your circumstance or goal 15% without more resources or authority?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a good exercise to do if you're trying to implement equity is what can you do to make this 15% better
Mm-hmm.
without more permission? So no one telling you you can do it or this is allowed or not allowed, and no more money or
Mm-hmm.
time or labor. Like what can you do 15% better? I think that exercise is really powerful because sometimes in this work it can feel really hopeless and like, we never have enough, we never have enough time, the money, people, anything. Always remind yourself of the autonomy you do have to make things better and
Mm-hmm.
always focus on that. Like even if it's just 1% better, do that. And do
Mm-hmm.
that exercise consistently and you will always be improving. I'm not saying you're going to ever solve it, but you'll always be improving and that's enough.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is great advice. I'll call it a mother advice, because it's kind of it has everything in it, like everything you want to start, where you want to start with, how to approach people, most especially the board. Most people complain that their board is usually risk averse. It's hard to convince them to go a certain way from what they are used to already. So it's a big trouble when we want to talk about that, especially in the non-profit world. And if, just like you said, if your ED or your CEO does not believe in what you're preaching to them, it becomes also hard to implement, even though
Yes.
you may know better or know the better way to do things. So thank you for that advice. So what's next for you and what's next for Elevate? Especially now that we're entering the fall.
Yeah. What's next for Elevate? One thing I really noticed in nonprofits is I work with a lot of nonprofits that don't have some critical infrastructure for fundraising, who also still can't, the investment even into a consultant, even for a short term project, is a lot. So I've been really
Mhm.
thinking about how to support. And one of the ways that I've thought about it is helping develop case messaging, case for support, case statement, ED, board updates, how to frame them. So that's
Mhm.
something that I'm trying to tinker with to help
Wow.
EDs really have the confidence and clarity to speak about their work, the unique value proposition from a fundraising lens. I
Hmm.
think a lot of the times EDs feel a lack of confidence talking to their board, talking to a donor, talking to a funder. That's not
Yeah.
valid. They're usually experts in their organization and they just need a little bit of support crafting their message to feel confident doing so. So that's one thing. The other thing, except for Elevate, is I'm currently in training to be certified by ICF, International Coaching Federation, so that I have
Mm.
more tools to support and guide clients in figuring out what they need. And usually the tools they already have within themselves, but trying to be a supportive figure in that way. I realized that so much of my work supporting EDs was doing some element of coaching. So I wanted to
Mm.
formalize this and get the training and accreditation needed to be able to do it
Mhm.
in this way.
Wow, so many things for you going on. That's amazing. Can't wait for you to get on, try the certification, and because there's so many people that's going to benefit from the wisdom that you carry, and the different ways that you can be able to change mindset in terms of raising money. You shared with us already a lot of things that you know, even tweaking a keyword, how it can even improve a fundraising campaign. So that is really incredible. And we're saying all the best as
Thank
you continue
you.
all the things that you're doing. And of course, we're gonna stay in touch with you and get to hear more. So, how can people find you? How can they get involved? How can they support what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Please add me on LinkedIn. I love to connect. If you're a fundraiser, emergent fundraiser, just needs support, I always pay it forward. I always connect with people because that's how I got to where I am, through the generosity of
Yeah.
other fundraisers. So please don't be shy to reach out. I love meeting new people and hearing about where they're going, EDs and problems that they're facing. I
Mhm.
consider it part of my giving back at Elevate. I
Yeah.
also do, I've been delinquent on it, but I do write a Substack usually every 2 weeks called Imposters Unite, where I kind of delve
Mm.
into some of the problems that we surface, but maybe don't say out loud. I also
Yeah.
regularly contribute to Community Centric Fundraising Hub and Candid. So if you go on my LinkedIn, you'll usually see my writings, and that's one way to hear, if you're interested in this conversation, hear more about my thoughts.
Mm. That's beautiful. Thank you very much. Before we go, do you have any last word you want to share with us before we go?
I would say, like I said, I think the nonprofit sector carries the best and worst of humanity in a lot of ways. And I've truly met such incredible people that have committed their entire lives and careers to making this world and their corner of it a little better. So if you're in the sector and at any point, if you're feeling disheartened or demoralized by the state of things or the urgency or the scarcity, I do urge you to reach out and build relationship with people and connect, and remember that you're not even alone in that, and that
Mhm.
the antidote to despair is often just community. So anytime you're feeling like that, do reach out, even to me. Let me know, shoot me a message, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm glad that you're here.
Wow. Thank you very much, Esther. I really, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today. So much
Candid.
insight that you really shared with us today. So much. And, all of them is kind of thought provoking as well, for us to ask ourselves questions within ourselves to know if we're really doing what we're doing the right way. And you've given us in every angle how we can approach some of these things, especially in fundraising world that sometimes can be, challenging. Sometimes you can even doubt yourself with what you
Yeah,
are doing. Are you really doing the right thing? Are you really going to get to this point that you've envisaged for yourself and your team? So thank you so much for sharing this wisdom with us today. And of course, just like Esther said, please stay in touch with her. That's her name on the screen. You can, reach out to her through LinkedIn. She's always active to respond to you. Uh, so don't be a stranger to Esther. So
no,
yeah, don't be a stranger. So thank you so much, Esther. We'll get to
thank you,
talk more
Catherine.
and have the best of your evening.
You
And
too.
happy new month in advance as well. We're ending August
Yes.
today, and tomorrow is September 1st. So happy new month, everybody. And happy fall.
Happy fall. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care and bye.
Bye.
Bye.